until next month. And also due to some reporting complications from St. Louis County, I was not able to get reports from them to calculate recoupment. So I am not proposing to levy recoupment this year as well. Next, we're going to look here at our rates that I am recommending for our operating levy. These are the rates by property class. So the first column there is for 2025 tax year, and then it shows you the next column, tax year for 2024, and then shows you the change. And so you'll see that in each property class, the rate is going down slightly. And the reason why is because as your assessed value increases, you need less levy dollars levied to meet the required or allowed tax revenue. So as your AV increases, you may see a decrease in your rates. And I actually have a chart a little bit further in the presentation where you'll see the trend of that happening for us since 2015. So these rates right here are just for our operating levy, so they do not include our debt service levy. So you will see that across the board, except for in personal property, there's a slight decrease in each one of our property classes, with our blended rate for next year being 3.1432, which is an overall decrease in our blended rate of 0.2342. Next, you'll see the same chart, but this chart now includes our debt levy service. So our debt levy service is 0.49 cents, which is the same in tax year 25 as it was in tax year 24. So you will see that in the change column, there it remains the same as it was in the prior chart, because there is no change in our debt levy for the 25 tax year. So when we take those, our total blended rate, I'm proposing the allocation of this rate by different funds. So our first fund is our general fund, and as a reminder, that pays for our non-certified salaries and benefits, our supplies, our services, and I'm recommending that we levy 1.084 into that fund. And then we have our special, our teacher fund, which only pays for our certified salaries and benefits. And I'm recommending that we levy 2.0132 into that fund. And then we have our capital projects, which this fund pays for our non-bond capital projects or capital equipment. And so I'm recommending we levy 0.046 cents into that fund. And then we have our debt service, which has remained unchanged for the last 10 years, and I'm recommending that we levy 0.49 cents into that fund, which gives us our total blended rate of that $3.6332 cents. And as a reminder, I think what's really important to know from this screen is, actually I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm talking about that screen. So once we talk, now that we know what the rates are and how we propose to levy them against each fund, what revenue will that generate? And this chart shows you what the revenue would generate if it was collected at 100%. And we know that that is not an accurate picture. There is going to be some members of our community that maybe pay their tax bills late or not even at all. So we do have a historic collection rate of around 96 to 97%. So that is what the revenue is represented in the second column, is a property tax revenue at 96%. And that shows you that then from each one of those funds, our grand total revenue for FY26 would be from our local property taxes would be $246,401,139, which again is a representation of our blended rate of 3.6332. I like to point out that this is overall about $7.4 million revenue growth from the prior year, and that this means that on average for every penny that we levy, we collect $669,000. So what is the impact on a homeowner? And so this is the chart that I was referencing earlier, where you can see the trend of our tax rate versus our assessment years. So on a reassessment year, which again, those are the odd years, you'll see that the tax rate, which is represented by the green line, goes down. And then in the non-reassessment year, which is the even years, you'll see that the rate slightly goes back up. And this is because we have typically a higher assessment, in the assessment years, our AV increases. And so again, it goes back to it takes less levied dollars to be able to collect the allowable revenue that we are allowed to collect. And as a reminder, we're under the Hancock Amendment, which means that as a school district, we can either collect 5% growth or CPI, whichever one is lower. And this year, for tax year 2025, the CPI is 2.9%. So that's what our growth is based on. So if we take a sample homeowner's tax bill, that's what this screen represents, and it shows you the tax bill from one year to the next. So the top calculations are for tax year 2025, with the bottom section being from the prior year. So what I just applied the general AV increase that we saw on average for each of those property classes. So, for the homeowners, we saw in general an AV increase of 13% in our overall property class, minus the new construction. And we're assuming that this sample homeowner didn't do any new construction and that this was just a existing property. And then we saw then the cars, which is personal property, a decrease of that 2%. So there, we're assuming in this sample property that the sample owner of the vehicle had a depreciating asset, so their value decreased. So when you take their market value, you have to multiply it by the assessed value percentage. So for homes, that's 19%, and for vehicles, that's 33%. And when you get that value, you then divide it by $100 of assessed value. You times that by the rate for each one of those property classes, and that gets you the tax bill. So as you see from 2025 to 2024, the difference or the increase that this sample tax owner will see is an increase of $127 to their overall tax bill, real and personal. So are there any questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Say once again, you know this stuff better than we do, and having just spoken with the folks that do our audit, I'm confident in your work and what you've presented. I'd like to say it makes perfect sense, but I'm not an accountant, so I probably shouldn't say that. But I do appreciate you going in detail and explaining how it affects homeowners, and so thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. This will be up for approval at our regular scheduled meeting. But next up on the tax hearings agenda is 4.02, and that is an invitation for any public comments regarding the proposed tax rate. Anyone have any questions that they'd like to?
I think we have a question.
Yeah.
Being
If
reluctantly.
you have a question, well, you're welcome to come up to the podium and yes, please.
Can I stand up?
Well, the microphone will not pick you up, unfortunately, in the back. Come on, Samantha, you can do it.
These are from like the pie chart that you guys sent out in that email today.
I believe so, yeah.
No, our questions are kind of.
So I'm Samantha, and I work at Paramount as a teaching assistant.
And I'm Allison. I'm at Piermont as well as a teacher.
Okay, so we are trying to understand what's happening. Is this something that's going to be a decrease in funds for our district, or is this no? Okay. Yes.
Yep, please.
So as you're, so the The reason why you see a tax rate decrease is because we're only allowed to collect a certain amount of revenue. And so to collect a certain growth amount of revenue. And so once you reach that, you have to change your levy taxes wise, those dollar amounts. Actually, this might help. If I go to the change screen here. So you'll see that we're decreasing our tax levy rates, but that's because our assessed value has increased. And so if we were to charge the same rates as we did the prior year, we would collect more revenue than we're allowed to based on our growth. So even with this rate change decreasing, we're still going to see over $7 million increase in property tax revenue next year. Does that answer the question, or do you need more detail? Because I'm happy to, there's actual equation I can show you if you'd like.
You did answer the question, and I am not as prepared as I should be. But there was something that I thought I heard where they were thinking of changing from property value to square footage and age of homes to take funds. Is that something that or am I just like?
I mean, to tell you the truth, you're talking about like legislative bills that
Yes.
they've proposed? Yeah.
Yes.
There's been a lot of legislative bills proposed specifically around property taxes and personal property taxes. There was a special session that was, that came, and their big push was around property taxes, and also with the other one that was a big push was removing or reallocating money that came from the gambling industry into the formula, and they were going to reallocate that to a different bucket per se. But the square footage, I've heard that they want to change the percentage in how the AV is calculated, but there's not been anything actually gone into effect yet. So, and the special session is out, and so the new session will happen in the spring. And so we'll see what bills the legislators propose and what, if any of them pass.
Actually, I do know where I heard that. I heard that from the Missouri Teachers Union. Like,
Wow.
that was something that was put out, and I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to understand, is this changing, because this has been a decades thing, right? Pulling from the property values for funding.
Yes, and as of right now, that is still in place. There has not been any legislation that has passed that I am aware of. I hope there's nothing there, but no, I've not been made aware of any calculation that's changed that. My state auditor calculation forms remain the same this year as prior year. My reports from the county this year for assessed value remain the same, and I have not been notified of any change in how assessed value is calculated outside of those, like it's still the same percentages that have been in place for many years.
Do we want to, so 91% of our funding comes from property value.
Comes from local taxes, which 86% of that is specifically property taxes, property and personal taxes. But our full local is over 90%, yes.
And how much of like the gambling and the lotto, like from the casinos and the lottery and stuff go to education percentage?
So that actually is considered state funding, and so that money goes through the state, and then we get it. How school districts get it is through the formula, the educational formula that they have, and it's part of what funds that formula, specifically the portion of it that is classroom trust formula. So so it goes through the state formula process. So if you are in a community, though, that does have a gambling center, so I am thinking of like the Hancock School District, for example, they receive quite a bit of dollar amounts from their personal property assessment of that piece of equipment, from that piece of property. And so, but then any money, revenue that they pay taxes on from that goes through the state, and then the school gets it through their foundation formula through the state funding.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So talk to your legislators.
Thank you.
Local property taxes are very important to us.
Highly important.
Highly important, exactly. Thank you.
public comments on the proposed tax rate? Okay. Thank you, Carrie. So may I have a motion and a second to adjourn the annual tax rate hearing? So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We will begin our regularly scheduled meeting in about 10 minutes.